The time is precisely 6:15 p.m. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. News edited by Dulmin Samarasinghe and read by Chandima Veerakon. Headlines. Peradeniya University invents a methodology to separate oil and chemicals from seawater. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs takes measures in connection with the GSP Plus facility. Several provincial hospitals will be developed as national-level hospitals. Salaries of Electricity Board employees increased. In news overseas, new Israeli government approves right-wing march through Jerusalem. In sports, 3 youth will take part in the World Youth Games scheduled to be held at Nairobi, Kenya. Local stories in detail. Minister Keheliya Rambukwella says that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is taking measures in connection with the GSP Plus facility. He said the country is ruled according to a constitution as an independent state. Sovereignty of the people is the fundamental basis. The minister mentioned this as a reply to a question from a journalist at the Cabinet press briefing today. Several provincial hospitals will be developed as national-level hospitals. The Cabinet has approved the proposal submitted by the Health Minister in this regard. Several hospitals including Matale, Ambalipitiya, Navalapitiya, Mana, Avisavella and Mullaithu hospitals will be developed. The Cabinet has approved a proposal submitted by the Health Minister to provide a MRI scanner to the Maharagama Apeksha Hospital. Minister Keheliya Rambukwella said that the government has been able to implement development projects to the value of 284 billion rupees while spending more than 300 billion rupees to control COVID. The government is continuing to provide relief to the low-income recipient families and for those who lost their livelihoods due to the pandemic. The government has implemented a special program to assist the victims of floods and other disasters. Meanwhile, the central bank has announced that the cost of living can increase in an unbearable manner if fuel prices were not increased. The present situation has affected the local banking system due to the high value of the dollar. The central bank has informed the government that fuel prices should be revised immediately due to problems related to 3 months of foreign reserves. A special program will be implemented to increase organic fertilizer production. Discussions are taking place in this regard with small and medium-scale organic fertilizer producers. State Minister Mohan De Silva said that the program is now taking place in the Kaluthara district and it will be implemented in future in other districts. The government purchases fertilizer through Lak Pohora and commercial Pohora corporations. Meanwhile, State Minister Kanaka Herath said that production of local organic fertilizer will be increased to meet fertilizer requirements of tea and rubber plantations. He said that 4 large-scale organic fertilizer factories have been built. Small-scale organic fertilizer factories will be built at regional level. He said that necessary financial allocations have been made by the government. The Tea Research Institute said that fertilizer needed for tea plantations can be reduced by preventing soil erosion. Health Minister Pavitra Wanyarachi says that the Health Ministry has taken steps to improve physical and human resources to provide a quality service to the people. She said that the government hopes to continue with the quality health services provided to the public. She mentioned this while attending a function to recruit student nurses for training and to hand over appointment letters to pharmacologists and laboratory technicians today. The Ministry of Health says that another 2014 COVID-19 patients have been discharged after recovering from the virus. This has increased the country's coronavirus recoveries to 192,478. Sri Lanka has so far confirmed 225,922 cases of COVID-19, while 28,580 patients infected with the virus are currently under medical care. The death toll due to the virus currently stands at 2,203. Salaries of Electricity Board employees have been increased by 25% from this year to 2023. The Cabinet and the Board of Directors have given the approval. The Electricity Board employees have been able to bring down the loss of 97 billion rupees in 2019 to 56 billion rupees by 2020. The trade unions should sign the collective agreement to provide the salary increase to the entire staff. This news comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Continuing with the local stories, Special Police Task Force has arrested 2 suspects with an unlicensed firearm and 10 rounds of ammunition at the Kandy-Digana roadblock. Police say they found the firearm and bullets when they checked the jeep the suspects were travelling. The suspects were to be produced at Theldania Magistrate Court today. To end the local news, the headlines again. Peradeniya University invents a methodology to separate oil and chemicals from seawater. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs takes measures in connection with the GSP Plus facility. Several provincial hospitals will be developed as national-level hospitals. Salaries of Electricity Board employees increased. That ends local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Moving on to the main news story, a group of scientists of Peradeniya University has invented a methodology to separate oil and chemicals which leak from the Express Pearl ship from seawater. Taking part in a media briefing today, Senior Professor Gamini Rajapaksha said that the oil and chemicals released to the ocean can be removed without any issues under this methodology. He said the oil removed under this methodology can be used again. Peradeniya University has obtained the patent for the new methodology. That ends the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Moving on to Watchlight, people in the area say that transport has been disrupted as the road from Mathura to Diavila Yaya has not been developed. They said that the road is being used to transport harvest in the area. Although concrete has been laid about 10 years ago on the road, it is now in a dilapidated condition. People request the authorities to repair the road immediately. That ends Watchlight. We move on to world news. The headlines. New Israeli government approves right-wing march through Jerusalem. The U.S. Navy aircraft carrier USS Reagan enters South China Sea. Japan calls for change in coal power policy. Israeli far-right groups are expected to participate in a so-called March of the Flags through the Damascus Gate of occupied East Jerusalem's Old City and into its Muslim quarter today, drawing warnings from Hamas of renewed hostilities should it proceed. Israel's new government approved the controversial march by right-wing nationalist and pro-settler groups on Monday, a step that risks inflaming tensions with Palestinians. A U.S. aircraft carrier group led by the USS Ronald Reagan has entered the South China Sea as part of a routine mission, the U.S. Navy said, at a time of rising tensions between Washington and Beijing, which claims the most of the disputed waterway. The carrier is being accompanied by the guided missile cruiser USS Shiloh and the guided missile destroyer USS Halsey. Japan's Environment Minister Koizumi Shinjiro has called for a review of the country's policy of supporting coal-fired power exports under limited conditions. The call came after the leaders of the Group of 7 agreed to end international financing of coal power generation without emissions controls this year in their summit that closed on Sunday. The G7 recognizes coal power generation as the biggest cause of general house gas emissions. To end the world news, the headlines again. New Israeli government approves right-wing march through Jerusalem. The U.S. Navy aircraft carrier USS Reagan enters South China Sea. Japan calls for change in coal power policy. That ends world news. On to development news. The Cabinet has granted approval to proposal to construct a wind power plant for the Mana grid substation. In January 2019, the Cabinet agreed to add 60 megawatts wind power capacity to substations at Trincomalee, Mana, Madampe, Bolavatta and Kappalthurai. Under this project, international competitive bids have been invited for the construction of a wind power plant for the Mana grid substation. That ends development news. On to sports news. 3 youth will take part in the World Youth Games scheduled to be held in August at Nairobi, Kenya. Isru Kaushalya of Mathugama Ananda Vidyalaya has qualified to run in 400 metres. Shanika Lakshani of Gampaha Holy Cross and Tarushi Karunaratne of Valala A. Ratnayaka Vidyalaya have qualified for women's 800 metres. The Women's T20 cricket competition at the 2022 Birmingham Commonwealth Games will take place from July 29th to August 7th at Edgbaston. The group stage matches of the 8-team event will take place till August 4th, with the semi-finals scheduled for August 6th. The final as well as the play-off for the third place will take place on August 7th. Australia's softball team, which is currently training in Japan for the Tokyo Olympics, has invited the public to watch them practice. The Australian women's softball team has been based in Ota City, Gunma Prefecture, north of Tokyo since June 1st. The city has not allowed players to practice in public until now due to coronavirus fears, but officials gave the go-ahead on Tuesday after confirming that sufficient anti-infection measures were in place. That ends the sports news.
Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply. Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank. The safest place for your money.
All economic centres will be opened on Thursday and Friday only for wholesale trading. Mobile vehicle traders can purchase vegetables and fruits from the economic centres on those 2 days. Economic centres will also be opened on the 12th and the 13th. That ends Business News.
Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank. The safest place for your money. Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply.
Economic news, courtesy of...
I bought my daughter a laptop for her work by managing my finances. Whatever the expenses may be, I can't afford to miss out on life's special moments like her birthday or our anniversary. So you need to invest to make your family's future flourish.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibilities. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
And on economic news, the Cabinet has approved a proposal submitted by the Prime Minister as the Minister of Finance to table in Parliament a report on the final budget situation related to 2020. The Finance Minister should submit it to the Parliament and the public before 5 months after the end of the financial year. Accordingly, the Central Bank has published the Annual Report 2020 on the 31st of May. That ends economic news.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
Weather Report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasir, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
And finally on the Weather Report, The Met Department says several spells of showers will occur in western, central and Sabaragamu provinces and in Gaul and Madra districts. Wind speed will be 30 to 40 kilometers per hour in the western slopes of the Central Hills, northern, north central and northwestern provinces and in Hambantota and Trincomalee districts. The wind speed can be increased up to 50 kilometers per hour at times in these areas. That ends the weather report.
Weather report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasir, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
And to end this bulletin of news, the headlines again. Peradeniya University invents a methodology to separate oil and chemicals from seawater. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs takes measures in connection with the GSP Plus facility. Several provincial hospitals will be developed as national-level hospitals. Salaries of Electricity Board employees increased. In news overseas, new Israeli government approves right-wing march through Jerusalem. In sports news, 3 youth will take part in the World Youth Games scheduled to be held at Nairobi, Kenya. With that, we conclude this bulletin of news from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.